Chapter 5. Mastery of Strength. Justinian knew that at the current moment, he was just a small fry on the scale of DC. He didn't know why he got sent to DC of all places, as he thought he was going to be sent somewhere easier. Though it was probably him not being grateful for his reincarnation. Regardless, Justinian was not one to get caught up in the past. Just as he said to Diana and the Justice League, he would not leave Mars for weeks, if not months. The passage of time had lost all meaning to him. But he did have a question. Drake, Albion, if I continue to use the boosted gear and divine dividing like this, will I also learn magic? You already are. Dragon Aura is a draconic magic from Dragon Deus, or as that light novel you read is called DXD. He said the last part disgusted, but he continued. I will say this. I have had previous hosts who were powerful, but none of them could use the boosted gear to the level you have without the balance breaker. Their mortal human bodies could not endure the strain of boosting more than a few times. However, your Custodes' genetically engineered body not only endures the strain, but even improves real time. Any microfractures of damage regenerate before they can slow you down. I wonder what you will become in a decade at this rate. Agreed, but since you are our host, and all of our past wielder souls are gone, the curse of the Juggernaut drive is no more. I wonder what would happen if you used the chant. Would you need to combine the two to make it work? True. We got a whole world to ourselves, boys and enemies. He put his helmet on and twirled his spear before turning around. Popping out of the ground like giant moles, white Martians began to gather around him. Well then, why don't you try to use our elements? I am a fire dragon, and Albion is a poison dragon. Why not see if you can fight with just that? I agree. My poison was unmatched even after I sealed my original venom. With that, he sent his spear back to his soul and instead focused on his soul link to both heavenly dragons. With none of the seals the original god placed, the bond was perfect. He exhaled as he opened his palms as powerful dragon flames appeared on his left. On his right, dripping purple poison began to drip onto the ground. But the moment the flames appeared in his hand, the Martians roared in fear. The fire was a mental trigger placed in Martians to prevent them from becoming their original violent race, the Burning. However, dragon fire did not operate like mundane flames, and not after this. He grinned as he clasped his hands together and fused the venom of Albion and the flames of Drake. He focused on the feeling of his magic and created dark purple toxic flames. Dragons were beings tied to magic, and having two of them meant that he was taking on some of their properties. He saw the Martians begin to back away, but he was not a merciful guy anymore. All mercy, fear, doubt, and hesitation had been bred out of him at the genetic level. Boost, boost, boot, boost, boost. He surged the dragon aura into his hands, and he launched a wave of toxic flames. The Martians screeched in terror and tried to burrow back into the ground, but they were not fast enough. Any that were caught in the flames began to melt and burn away under the toxic effects of dragon poison. Albion's poison, his peak, had been able to kill the very gods, and Justinian planned to use it to its full power in the future. Mix that with all burning dragon flames from his rival, and he creates a deadly weapon. Justinian smirked as he moved his arms in a circle as he blasted these deadly toxic flames all around him. Any Martians that stuck around melted and burned away to nothing. When they were gone, he waved his hands and extinguished the flames on his arms. There we are, all around him. Nothing remained of the Martians who tried to attack him. However, this meant that he could not eat them after this. Save this move for when things get hectic. I can't eat ashes. See that white one? My flames are superior. Save it, red one. It was my venom that made the mixture stronger. It was both of you that made that possible. Stop arguing. Yes, Dad. Albion chuckled. We don't even have those. Justinian remembered something. All right, dragons and Dragon Deus can just appear for magic, right? Correct. Me and Albion are so strong because we are one of the naturally occurring dragons. Don't get it twisted, and any dragon has the potential to improve. But those born from an egg just start from zero while we are born powerful. I guess you can say that me and Drake are opposites. He was formed from the eruption of a volcano overflowing with mana. As for me, I was created from a poison zone in the underworld. We quickly grew stronger until we were called the Heavenly Dragons. We were the first beings who would not die to each other's strongest moves. As such, we sealed them away and created our techniques. Then we battled to see who was the strongest, and despite being surrounded by the three factions, we still fought each other more than focused on our enemies. It was what allowed them to beat us. Not my proudest moment. If we had just worked together, we would have one. But we were young, prideful dragons. Can you blame us? No, not really. You had a rivalry to settle, and you were not about to let it go. However, many things have happened since then, like you being sealed in the original Longinus. Now, though, you are in far better gears. True, this new boosted gear is far more efficient than the original, and my soul is quite free. Same. I am still bound to it, but without a great deal of restriction. With that, he waved his hand and extinguished the still-burning toxic flames. With that, he walked off into the red sands. This is how he spent his time for the next 6 weeks. The white Martians were numerous, and they often attacked him, but far less than before. Now that they knew he could use fire that killed them, they avoided him like the plague. Some of the especially brave or foolish still took a crack at him. He didn't often use his flames and instead focused on his other abilities. Day by day, his natural ability to sense and use his magic was growing stronger. The Emperor's restriction on psychic powers was also being melted away by his constant training. Every time he boosted several times, his sixth sense became... It was bordering on future sight, as he could always react a few moments before an attack was sent his way. It was like he got Lion L. Johnson's instinct without the severe lack of people skills. The biggest thing was that his Custodes' baseline body was growing stronger on its own to endure the levels of power flowing through it. He was faster, more durable, quicker on his feet, and his gear was growing alongside his growing soul. Having soul-bounded gear was the best because you never had to replace it. As he grew stronger, it also did. Through his 6 weeks of constant training and battle against tides of white Martians, he had grasped some of his abilities. The boost and divide were simple enough, and he had them down. Interestingly, the reflector of Albion and the penetrative Drake could each be boosted. This means that in the future, he could, in theory, reflect Darkseid's Omega beams if he put enough power into the reflector. As for penetrate, it had the bonus of also having that useful trait. Some of the strongest foes in DC had incredible defenses, and if he put enough power into it, he could even pierce the gods. On another note, Albion even started to teach him some more dangerous skills, like the half-dimension, which affected even dimensions. What that meant for a reality like DC, he didn't know, but dimensional magic was always powerful. He was on a quest for improvement, but today was the way when the 6th week would turn into 7. Currently, he was sitting in front of the campfire roasting some white Martian warrior that had gotten ballsy and wanted to fight him. He had battled it with his bare hands, and he had ripped its head off in the brawl. The Martian struggled to pierce his auramite armor, which had only gotten more durable as his soul grew. Its psychic abilities did not work on him, as the warding on it prevented psychic intrusion. Even if a psychic got past your defenses, they have us to deal with. The mind of a dragon is a very dangerous place. There are 3 souls in here, so finding the right mind would be hard. Just as he grabbed a rack of skewered ribs, he looked up at the sky. It had been 7 weeks since he met Wonder Woman, and it seemed she was back. His sixth sense just told him that it was her. He didn't stand and just began to rip off the flesh of the ribs with his teeth. He could eat the bones, but he satisfied himself with the marrow inside. When the Justice League ship landed, Wonder Woman walked out near him. When she saw what he was eating and he half-butcher Martian next to him, she didn't judge. For now, he greeted her. Greetings back to Mars. Thank you for the welcome, Justinian. I am here on League business. You see, Bruce has been keeping an eye on your activities. I know, his primitive satellites are quite easily detected. Diana was not tech-savvy or from the future, so she couldn't agree or disagree with him. Right then, Bruce wanted to talk to you about your energy. Every time you want to release your energy, you vent it from your crystal wings, right? Yes. What about it? Now, Diana told him something interesting. Well, he isn't the best at magic, but he has a few ways to test it. He is saying that the concentration of magic is rising as your power isn't based on science. It is magic, so he is worried what effect it will have on the Martians if they learn to tap into it. I see. I haven't noticed a big change, as even at my strongest, it could take decades to have a noticeable change. I'm not even going to stay on Mars for much longer. I would like to spend some time on Terra before it becomes an irradiated wasteland. Barry told me. You said techno-barbarian warlords took over, right? Yes, after the collapse of humanity's fearing empire to warp storms, Terra descended into infighting. Humans fought for the advanced technologies they forgot about. Often, they used some very dangerous weapons which led to Terra turning from a blue gem of life to a wasteland. I and my Legion of the Legio Custodes took place in the fighting, and we wiped out the barbarian warlords in the Unification Wars. Glorious days, but so long ago. She sat down on a rock as she wondered about that. How old are you? Me? I was turned into a Custodes in the 31st millennium, and it was the 999th century of the 41st millennium, making me almost 10,000 years old. Am I lying, though, but am I? The genetic memory is there. Hearing his words made Diana look at his face. He was not aged, as he looked to be about 28 or 30 with short black hair. He had a defined jawline and bright golden eyes that spoke of won battles and wars. And you are still human? Yes. I don't know how many times I must repeat it, but we of the Legio Custodes are supposed to be the pinnacle of mankind. The greatest warriors mankind has ever produced. We do not age. We do not suffer the effects of time. We require no sleep, and we can stay awake for a century without food or water. We can breathe in any atmosphere, and we can eat almost anything. Our wounds close before they can bleed, and we can survive even with our organs damaged. Diana seemed quite awed as she respected powerful warriors. The more I hear of your time, the more I want to see it. Trust me, you do not. That is why I wish to prevent my timeline from ever coming to be. But that is a long time from now. He finished off his rack of ribs before tossing the bones away. He picked up his guardian spear and placed it on his shoulder. Would you honor me with another sparring match? She grinned as that sounded like a date. Anytime, I want to get my honor back from the first time. She just smiled. Then, take your honor back by besting me. Diana had every intention of winning this time. If the Custodes are the greatest male warriors mankind has produced, then we Amazons are the greatest female warriors. He gripped his guardian spear tighter as they tensed before they charged at each other. He could get used to this, as he had met her twice, and she was quick. Chapter 6, Demigods versus White Army. Very quickly, Justinian had grown to truly respect Diana as a warrior. Even in his current peak power, she could keep up with him blow for blow. Not only could she keep up with his power, she could even match his precognition. He could feel a few moves ahead, but when he moved, she was there to meet his swing. The sparring match against Wonder Woman brought out the warrior in him as he got tested hard. Not once could he let his guard down as she was learning how he fought. She quickly learned that he did not tire. The reach of his massive guardian spear forced her to always think ahead. His precognition made this battle as much as a battle of skill as a battle of wits. It was to be expected that she could keep up because the gods of DC were extremely powerful. Not only was she the daughter of Zeus, she was blessed by most of the Greek gods. Unlike before, when they only went for a short match, this time their spar lasted hours. Over 5 hours of non-stop combat with Diana, with neither of them stopping. At times like this, he thanked his stars he was a Custodes. His muscles were unaffected by lactic acid. His nerves fired faster than any baseline mortal human, meaning that he was still untired after 5 hours of non-stop battle with Wonder Woman. Justinian hefted his massive guardian spear and swung it down on her. She caught it with her shield, parried it, and used her smaller size to run under the spear. He raised his knee, but she jumped in the air and off it. He clenched his left fist, and he threw a punch, catching her jaw. He had boosted 12 times then, and that sheer sound that his Auramite boosted gear made when it struck her jaw was brutal. However, he took the chance to use his second main ability, Divide. Diana herself felt her brain rattle as she was thrown into the ground. It shattered the Mars Earth all around them. Justinian for a moment worried, as he couldn't even see her buried in the Martian rock. Diana, R.Y. He stopped when she dragged herself out of the ground while clutching her cheek. Rather than mad, she seemed to be grinning. Great Hera, that was a punch. She reached into her mouth and set one of her molars back into place. Her healing factor caused the tooth to settle, and she popped her jaw back into place. He walked over and helped her out of the ground. Did that knock one of your teeth loose? She nodded, but she reached up and felt for her breathing mask, which was shattered. She pulled out a piece of glass in her cheek as it exploded. It did, and my breathing mask is no more. That didn't sound good. Can you breathe? She shook her head with a smirk. Nope. I will pass out if I stay too long without proper oxygen. Maybe an hour at this rate. Give me a moment. She turned around and walked back into her Justice League ship to get a new oxygen mask. While she did that, Drake was honestly appalled as he knew just how strong Justinian was at his base. Did she walk off 12-time boosted punch from Justinian with just a loose tooth? How? Albion, though, had been reading more into Justinian's memories, and he felt that was reasonable. She is a demigod, and from what I can see from Justinian's memories, gods in this reality are extremely powerful. I say it is more amazing that Justinian can match her after only 7 weeks of using our powers. He divided her, and she is fine. She is a monster. Still, if that is how durable the daughter of Zeus is, how much stronger are the gods themselves? Justinian didn't know, but he didn't worry. I don't know, but there will come a day when even the gods will fall to my might. Just 12 boosts in a row is 4,096 times stronger than I am now. 30 will be 1,073,741,824 times my power. At that level, even a god should worry. Can you even handle that level of power? The sheer pressure of containing that will burn your bones and disintegrate your cells, even for Custodes. I have to agree with Drake. Just boosting to that point might cause you to burst. We won't reach it soon, my friends, but there will come a day when even that power will be childish. By then, we shall surpass the very gods. Yes, I can hardly wait for the day. Don't forget about my power. As you increase your own strength, your foes will grow weaker, slower, and their power will be yours. That will my draconic friends. By then, Diana had returned with a brand new face mask. Sorry about that. Where were we? She was grinning again, and she looked to be itching for another round. He grinned back, but he had to cut her fun. I would, but we got company. Diana looked behind him and saw how giant fissures were forming. Oh, white Martians. How many? He spun his spear. Hundreds. She walked next to him as she was reminded of WW2. She looked up at Justinian with a smirk. Do Custodes have any war games? His face was suddenly split by a bloodthirsty grin. Blood games. Whoever kills more foes is declared champion. She grinned back. Sounds fun. Get ready to lose this blood game. He chuckled as he opened his hand and brought his helmet out from his soul. He slotted it on, and he felt how all the systems of the helmet linked back with his senses. They started to walk forward as white Martians began to emerge from the ground in massive numbers. Some of these were even bigger than he was, as these were sending some elites now. True warriors. I have never lost a blood game against a woman, Diana. You haven't ever played against a woman, yes? True, now I shall show you why. He roared as a purple pillar of dragon aura surged from his body as he never had released the 12 boost, just calmed it. She raised her shield and sword as they both ran forward. The white Martian army was massive as they had grown sick of Justinian. Over the last 7 weeks, he had killed scores of them in his many battles, and they planned to end his life now. He and Diana split up as this would not be a blood game if they worked together. She went left, and he went right, and he met the white Martian elite. Normally, they did not use weapons or armor, but these were some simple armor. They were even armed with psychic-focused spears, swords, and they were bigger than the normal. Each one was almost twice his height, but they were acting as the leaders of the regular Martians. Not to call white Martians weak, because they were powerful, just that he was an anomaly who could increase his power through Drake. With golden glowing eyes, he started a slaughter like he was facing the Tyranids. Now that this was not a spar, he went for the kill. His spear was covered in dark purple toxic flames, which fused into the matter disruption field, causing purple lightning to crackle from his spear. He swung his blade instantly. He cleaved the heads off 6 white Martians in one go. The Martians who saw the brutal act were driven to more brutality through their psychic net. They communicated through it as they shared their anger, hate, and fury. He knew that Wonder Woman was getting her kills, but they were almost obsessed with killing him. Not today, Xenos. In the same spear swing, he pulled the trigger and fired the bolter of his spear. The dragon aura bolt pierced through a line of them before it detonated in the middle of the army, incinerating the unlucky in a blast of dragon aura. Justinian gripped his spear tighter and began swinging it several times, causing corpses to fall around. He walked forward and continued to swing the spear with the fluidity and force of a Custodes. After 7 weeks of constant use of the boosted gear and divine dividing, his soul had gotten stronger. That went the same for his gear as his spear sliced through Martians like butter. "Show me more, give me more." Martians in the back of the army flew into the sky. When they were up there, they blasted him with their heat vision while their best psychics tried to get past his psychic defenses. He ignored the psychic attack as his armor's auramite halo, which created not just a powerful force field around him, but it also was an added layer of defense against psykers. With the divine dividing, he took off into the sky at the massive rays of heat coming at him. He calmly held his hand out and activated another one of his abilities, Reflector. He caught the blasts of each Martian, and he watched as the shimmering dimensional field devoured each beam. Shocked, the Martians stopped their attack, but it was too late. He clenched his fist, and before unleashing all of the energy had gathered back at the flying Martians. They roared at the offense before being vaporized by their own attacks. Once the flyers were taken care of, he dived down on top of an unlucky Martian while driving his spear into its back, killing it. He ripped his spear out, and now, surrounded by foes, he started what would have been a legendary last stand, only it wasn't. Boost. At the 13th boost, his power doubled, once more causing the pillar of purple energy to be visible for miles. Feeling the sheer pressure of his might made the Martians start to think this was not a good idea. 8,192. He leaned forward and moved like a purple tidal wave of energy as he compressed the energy around his body. He appeared behind 100 white Martians as he cut each one without the aliens knowing it. When they turned around, they were cut into ribbons, freaking out the rest of the army. They felt their deaths at the same time through their psychic net, freaking them out. The elites began to roar commands through their psychic net, but in the end, the urge to live became stronger. The white Martians began to flee, leaving their elites behind. Diana, who was off in another part of the army, fighting her own solo battle, was surprised when she saw Martians fleeing in terror. In the end, the army of 3,000 white Martians, after suffering severe deaths without victory, fled. Even the 5 elites began to flee because they were not seeking death. As they fled, he raised his left fist and aimed his Lastrum Storm bolter. Using his gathered energy, he started to fire a stream of double bolter shells hitting the back of the fleeing army. Each one exploded with the force of several ballistic missiles, and when he aimed at the elites, he saw the biggest one turn around and grab the one next to him. The large Martian chucked his ally to catch 2 bolters with its body. Seeing that even Justinian was appalled that he stopped shooting, Diana pulled her sword out of a dead Martian and was also shocked at the betrayal. As she walked up to Justinian, she felt that the elite warrior had abandoned its honor as a warrior. That was dash. Betrayal. Not a warrior's act. By the way, I killed 202. She snarled. 67. I don't have any energy beams or long-range attack. Learn more magic then. Justinian started to walk to where the elite that had been used as a meat shield had been, because he wanted its psychic focus weapon. Diana followed him, as she was curious as well, but when they reached the unlucky alien, they were shocked. It was alive, but severely wounded. Chunks of its body were gone, as its armor had cast a powerful psychic shield, saving its life. The large alien was on death's door, but its potent vitality kept it alive. Diana frowned and raised her sword. I will end it. He raised his hand to stop her as he kneeled over the wounded alien. He pulled out his Misericordia short sword and pointed the blade at the creature's heart. You were abandoned by those you called allies, used as a meat shield left to survive on your own. Though, I will grant you this mercy. I shall spare your life. In exchange, you shall serve as my servant. Not if you understand. Diana frowned as she looked at Justinian. Can he even be trusted? He nodded. I have my ways. Magical ways. While he may be a total newbie at magic, by having both heavenly dragons linked to his soul, their powers were becoming his, including some of their magic knowledge, which meant he could create a magic contract. The heavily wounded Martian elite raised the stump of an arm in surrender. It passed out, which he took as an acceptance. Guess that is a yes. Diana was not so sure. Would you like me to use my lasso of truth when it heals? That will be helpful. For now, we just wait. H picked up the curved, giant psychic focus blade. He was curious how it worked, but aside from being an intricately carved weapon, he didn't understand it. Wonder Woman, in the meantime, had an idea. Let's bring this into my ship. We will be able to talk there better. All right. He hefted the giant bag of flesh onto his shoulder, and Chapter 7, Remos SHOS. As Justinian and Diana returned to her ship, she now truly looked at his armor. It seemed perfectly suited to him specifically, and while it was cumbersome, he moved seamlessly in it. I've been wondering about your armor, as you don't ever seem to take it off. Can you? Normally, I would require a team of serfs with heavy equipment to remove my battle plate, but I have my ways. She remembered how he often sent his helmet and spear away to somewhere. Can you do that to your entire armor? I can. At that point, they had reached her Justice League ship, which was not too large, but still big enough to have enough room for at least several Custodes. Only that he was the exception because most Custodes were 9 feet tall. He broke the standard at being 12 feet tall. He set the white Martian down, and he saw how Wonder Woman closed the entrance to the ship. When the airlock settled in, she removed her face mask and took a breath. That is better. He reached up and removed his helmet as well and took a deep breath of oxygen. I agree. Breathing Martian air is terrible now or in the 41st millennium. For now, we just need to wait for the Martian to begin to regenerate enough to regain consciousness. Shouldn't be long. White Martians can regenerate from worse. She sat down and looked up at him. Have you been eating nothing but white Martians? There is not much more in Dash. Give me a moment. She walked deeper into the shop, making him tilt his head. She came back no long after and tossed him something unexpected. When he looked at what she gave him, he consulted his dragon friends. All right, boys, did Batman tamper with this? Both Albion and Drake began to use their sensory abilities to check the chocolate bar for any nasties. They did this quickly enough, and they gave him the go-ahead. Thank you, Diana. She smiled. Of course, I have never eaten a white Martian, but it can't be good. They are not. He pulled down the wrapper and tossed it into his mouth. Tasting chocolate after 7 weeks of pure white Martian rubber-tasting meat was heavenly. Chocolate is still as incredible as I remember. She smiled at being able to give him something else rather than white Martian. I know. For now, she looked down at the Martian elite they had caught as they saw the wounds starting to regenerate. Massive chunks were missing from its chest, its arms were both gone, and its right leg was burned in half. Even half of its face was burned, but the carbonized flesh was starting to fall away, replaced by new healthy flesh. They focused and allowed the alien to regenerate for a few more minutes when they felt it could speak without being a danger. Diana grabbed her lasso of truth and wrapped it around the alien's chest. Instantly, the power of the lasso woke up the elite, causing it to roar in pain. Justinian crossed his arms as he spoke. All right, then. Answer my questions honestly. What is your name? The Martian roared, but spoke in perfect English. Remos SHOS. All right, then, Remos. Why are you Martians so focused on killing me? The alien grit its teeth, but answers. You damaged our city, so we attacked? You are the aggressor here, Dark Warrior. Justinian frowned. I attacked no city, and you white Martians wiped out the green Martians. Enough about me. This is about you. Remos, you were betrayed by your own. What was that elite to you? The Martian clenched its mouth, but forced to tell the truth, it could not lie. My older brother. Now Diana seemed more disappointed in that so-called Martian warrior. Disgusting. Justinian agreed. Tell me, do you still want to live? Because if you do not want to serve me, the only path forward will be at the end of my spear. Do you understand that? With squinted eyes, the Martian nodded. I understand. Justinian walked over to the still healing Martian and looked at Diana. You can remove the lasso. All right. When Diana removed the lasso, he walked to the heavily wounded Martian. He kneeled down in front of it and sent his magical energy into his hand. He extended his hand to the Martian as he worked on a contract. You shall agree to serve me for the next 1,000 years as my servant. You shall follow my command without fail and speak only the truth when I ask it. You shall not raise your hand, mind, or any weapon to my person. Shake on it, if you understand. The Martian looked at his hand like it was the hand of death. But if it wanted to live, it had to follow. I shall follow. The moment the stump of its hand came into contact with his magic energies, he felt the contract take shape. With that, he had a servant who could teach him the psychic arts because he was starting to tap into the blood of the Emperor flowing through his body. He didn't have it down just yet, but the time where having a proper psychic to teach him would be helpful. Once the magic contract took hold over the Martian's soul, Justinian felt the bound form. Welcome to my service, Martian. First, tell me one simple thing. Do you desire revenge against your brother? He watched as the Martian hung its head low. Yes. He nodded as he turned around to walk out of the ship. The day just may come. Diana, I thank you for the assistance, but I shall return to my travels. Diana nodded. Got it. If you ever return to Earth, I am open to a spar any time. Likewise. The white Martian stood up as its leg had regenerated and followed Justinian out. It was smaller than the other elites, as most of them were twice his height. This one was only around 20 feet tall. I haven't bothered to ask this, Remos, but what are you? Male or female, because you Martians all look the same. I am female. In that case, turn into a human form, because you're ugly to look at. With squinted eyes, she asked a question. Preference. Justinian turned around, as he did not expect that question. Excuse me. Still squinting her eyes, the Martian asked again. What do you want me to look like? You are the master now. Guess I am. Use a psychic link and I will show you. He lowered his psychic shielding, which he could control. Even if she tried to harm his mind drag, and Albion would be able to destroy her attempts before she finished them. He felt as if she used a link where he gave his preferred appearance. If she was going to follow him around, he at least didn't want to look at her ugly face. Once she got the look, she instantly began to change her form into the one he gave her. When it was done, she began to stretch her shape-shifted body as she was now half her original height at 10 feet tall. She had short black hair and purple eyes, which made her just a bit shorter than he was. Better. He reached behind him and handed her psychic focus sword back. When held her sword, he saw how the blade shrunk down to match her new height. She looked up at him and waited for his instruction. Is this to your liking, master? It is. You look a whole lot better like this than as a giant white alien. He turned around and began to walk with her walking next to him. Now that he had a calm Martian under his control, he began to speak. We will be spending a lot of time together, so I will introduce myself properly. I am Justinian Arcadius Valorous Valder. I kept you alive because I want you to begin to teach me the psychic arts as soon as I fully unlock my psychic potential. Remos hummed. If that is the case, I can teach you the mind arts. Good. In the meantime, tell me more about your people, the White Martians. Our empire is mostly subterranean. My people inhabit the deep underground of Mars where we live. We communicate through our psychic net, but I am cut off from it now. She looked down as they walked across the red sands. You shouldn't have attacked me then. I honestly was content with being left alone to train. Remos didn't answer that because it was the cold truth. If her people had not attacked him, she would not have been enslaved to his will. Now, she was stuck in service to him for the next 1,000 years. Anything could happen in that time, and she might even die before then. She would never be free of him, but she wanted to live. If she had to be the slave of this giant warrior, then she would. Now that he had a companion who knew what Mars was like, he learned something. There was life other than Martians, as Remos showed him several types of plants that grew underground. They included a type of root that reminded him of yucca root, only that it was as spicy as Carolina Reapers. another type of deep underground plant with a mix of potato and carrot that Martians consumed and fed to their livestock. When he asked why there were no major cities above ground, he got his answer. The Martian surface had a terrible climate to raise livestock or grow plants. Everything grew underground where the climate was better. It was interesting to learn that apparently under the ground the white Martians had a vast empire and civilization. Psychic power was the biggest aspect, and every Martian could speak to others everywhere. Olympus Mons, where he first started training, was above a city. The Martians that had attacked him were just scouts trying to see what had caused a rain of rocks on their city. Hearing that made Justinian feel like everything clicked. That was why they had attacked him with such ferocity. He didn't apologize, but he was going to avoid his training on top of cities from now on. Remos actively led him to places where there were no cities so he could continue his training. Now that she was healthy again, she joined him in his spars, which allowed him to get a better feel for how she fought with her psychic powers. As an elite, she was very powerful compared to the scouts he had been fighting. While not to the level of Diana, she could keep up with him somewhat, which meant that he had someone to spar with. On another note, the following weeks of his travels, he was not attacked by Martians at all. Remos told him it was because they thought that it was not worth the losses they faced every time they attacked him. He was both glad and disappointed because he had grown used to eating Martian. Instead, Remos would show him how to catch the subterranean prey animals, including an insectal lizard creature. They tasted better than white Martian, as she was trying to keep him from seeing her species as food. He accepted that and merely focused on his improvement. Day by day, he managed to push how many times he could double his strength, which ended up finally causing the blood of the Emperor in his body to activate. Dragon Aura woke it up, which caused his sixth sense had evolved into a proper psychic ability that he would need to master. Without the warp, his psychic powers were going to be safer to use without the fear of possession or corruption. Even his use of magic was growing, meaning he now had psychic powers and magical abilities. When this happened, Remos had congratulated him for opening his mind. As he wanted, she began to teach him how to control his psychic abilities. One of the best exercises was psychic duels with Remos, someone who had centuries to train her abilities. She had far more skill in this art than he did, but he had a will of iron to keep up. For the next 6 weeks, he was unbothered by any Martians allowing him time to keep improving. The number of times he could boost himself up grew, how he utilized that power was refined, and he began to try to mix magic with psionic abilities. Drake and Albion never stopped teaching him new applications of magic and Dragon Aura, which were useful skills. According to them, by being linked to them, his soul was passively absorbing their power. It was why his soul was growing stronger, and with it all his gear. The boosted gear and divine dividing included, which were part of his power armor. A stronger soul was always welcome as it followed the same pace as his body. Now, he had spent 13 weeks on Mars rapidly improving his power with minimal interaction with the League. If he had been on Earth, they would have been far more annoying. He was going to remain on Mars for a while longer, but another JLA ship came on Mars. Curious, he and Remos stopped their current psychic duel and waited for the ship to land. He wondered who had come this time to visit him and why. I don't plan to turn him into a dragon, but him having a dragon soul and heart while still in a Custodes. Chapter 8. A psychic bond. I will remove the need for Superman to breathe, because it seems that it is a conflicting piece of information. Sometimes he needs to hold his breath, others he breathes just fine. So he will breathe in space fine. Justinian and Remos both looked up at the descending ship, wondering what the Justice League wanted now. The ship in question was a smaller vessel, meaning that it was not a large gathering of the League. When it landed, he waited patiently as the back of the ship opened and the ramp came down. From the ship emerged Diana, whom he expected, Batman again for some reason, Zatanna, and Martian Manhunter. He was confused as to why Zatanna was coming along, so he sent a psychic threat to Remos. That is weird. Why? They sent Zatanna, a magician. That is weird to me. Since your abilities are magical and psychic, they may be sending her as a precaution. I can still move faster than she can cast. Her head will roll before she can speak. Remos, as a white Martian elite, was a brutal warrior who respected the strong. That sounded just like her master who she had come to respect. Justinian cut the link as he turned to the league. "Diana, my friend, it is good to see you again. Have you come to spar once more?" She smiled at the sight of her new favorite sparring partner. "I will take that challenge, but no. Batman, you do your thing." Batman looked up at Justinian and Remos next to him. The way she was looking at him was giving him the creeps. Though from the look of it, Martian Manhunter was feeling even worse. Remos and he were glaring at each other. John hated white Martians because they exterminated his species, while Remos, as an elite, had taken part in the war. She herself had slaughtered many alongside her species, so she was not without blame. However, attacking her meant making an enemy of Justinian, so he held his tongue. For now, Batman spoke on why he came. "As I said before, the sheer amount of magical power you can produce is astronomical. Every time you just vent it into the atmosphere, it is beginning to cause the amount of magic to increase. I am not a magic expert, so Zatanna will explain it." Zatanna herself was quiet as she was looking up at Justinian. As a homo magi, she was innately in tuned to magic, and looking at him was looking at an endless sea. She could feel the vast magical aura coming off of him. Plus, she could tell that the armor he was wearing was soul bond equipment. She was confused as technology was not very compatible with magic. However, the way mana and soul energy flowed through his gear was perfect. Even a magical aura he was releasing was massive. This was the direct result of having the souls of two heavenly dragons linked to his. His constant use of their powers was causing his body to grow stronger, his magic reserves to grow, and his soul was take on the draconic energies of both. Comparing Justinian now to himself 13 weeks ago was like comparing a space marine to a pre-march. There was no comparison as he was growing mightier by the day. "Your name was Justinian, correct? I was brought along because Batman wanted me to check the magical saturation of Mars. I can safely say that the planet's total magic has increased by about 1.3%. Not a lot, but you to cause in 13 weeks is quite alarming. You are producing more, and eventually, the planet will undergo a magical awakening. Batman is worried about what this will mean for the white Martians. They are already dangerous as it is." Remos smirked. "True." John barely held back his fury at the sight of that grin. "Wipe that smile from your face, you monster." She just grinned even more. "What are you going to do about it, Green? Why don't you wipe my grin off my face?" Justinian started to chuckle because he had to admit he liked women with fire. He had avoided relationships in his old world because more and more women were becoming fed bullshit. Here, that seemed to not exist, which he was thankful for. "Relax a little." She smiled as she turned around and walked off. "I won't be far." He nodded as she could not leave his side forever, even if she wanted to. He still owned her soul at the moment. She is feisty, that one. "Regardless, I will ask you this, Batman. Would you rather me do my training on Earth? Because I choose Mars for its desolation. The white Martians have learned to leave me alone, and I leave them alone." Batman knew the kind of power Justinian had and the amount of devastation he could cause was incalculable. Batman had been keeping a close eye on him, and he had seen that the amount of power that Justinian was using was growing. If it kept going at this rate, it was only a matter of time for him to start matching some of the heavy hitters of the league. He could go toe-to-toe with Wonder Woman, and he didn't even know where his power ended. As such, he made the decision. "No, remain on Mars. It was just something we felt that you needed to know." Justinian nodded. "I see. I shall remain here for a while longer, but not much longer." Batman squinted his eyes as he had questions. "Where will you go?" "Earth for at least a few weeks. I have a long-term idea, but I will keep that to myself." Batman did not stick around longer, and he turned around to enter the ship. As for Martian Manhunter, he glared at Remos in the distance, who turned around to meet his gaze. She made a slit-through motion with her fingers, but rather than engage, he entered the ship. Zatanna glanced up at Justinian, but she did not say more as she also entered the ship. This just left Diana, who grinned at Justinian. "So, that spar's still on the table?" He grinned back as he grabbed his guardian spear off his shoulder before pointing at her. "Of course." Boost X12. As he boosted 12 times, his power rose to 4,096 times his current power, which was off the charts. Rather than a pillar of dragon aura, it was all contained in his body, meaning he was not wasting so much energy anymore. Justinian and Diana charged at each other, where he showed just how much stronger he had gotten. Batman, of course, took a date in case Justinian went rogue, which he did to all his friends, enemies, and even family. Justinian did not care, as there was no weakness to exploit other than dragon-slaying weapons. He would need to deal with that little weakness, but other than that, he surged his psychic energies and magic into his guardian spear, causing the weapon to glow with a purple and gold energy. Just as before, Justinian and Diana went at it for hours. She had to say that compared to 6 weeks ago, fighting him was harder. He had learned her fighting style, and his evolved, he could react to her attacks even before she thought of them. When she reacted, he changed his swing in before she could. This kept her on her toes, as she had never met a warrior who could see through her entire attacks. However, even with that, she too improved and was learning the way he fought. His ingrained genetic memory was feeding him skills, knowledge, and instincts. Remos in the distance observed the spar with deep curiosity because she was similar to Diana. As a warrior, she was always trying to improve, and sparring against Justinian was what she needed. The psychic duels, they had polished her psychic strength, and she had also begun to grow used to the contract they shared. As she observed to learn, Batman learned any weakness to exploit from Diana and Justinian. He expected there to be a chink in the armor he wore, but it had 0 failures. Thus far, he could not find a weakness to exploit, so he kept learning. This time, their spar went on for 5 hours, and this time they had a draw. Justinian had his guardian spear aimed at her neck while her sword was pointed at his heart. They both split away from each other a little winded, but in a few moments, they were back to full stamina. Honestly, Diana, how you keep us is beyond me. I am the daughter of Zeus, Justinian. It is to be expected for me to be strong. I should be the one to ask how you, a genetically engineered human, can keep up with a goddess. The Emperor himself touched upon me, and he had psychic powers to rival any god. We may as well both be demigods. Diana opened her mouth to speak, but she didn't say what she had in mind. Interesting. This Emperor sounds powerful. He is. Now then, I am thankful for the spar, Diana. Though I should get going. She smiled as she turned around. Likewise. When she returned to her ship, he saw her wave as the ramp and back entrance closed. With that, the ship left Mars, leaving Justinian and Remos back alone. When she came up to him, she had her arms crossed. I see you like the Amazon, Master. He hummed as he started to walk away. She is a powerful warrior. The issue is my size. As they walked, Remos looked at where his crotch would be. How big is it? I don't actually know. I haven't removed this armor in a while. Now, she had an interesting question. Are you unclean? That was a pointless question. No, the suit has cleansing functions. We are meant to wear the armor for centuries, and a buildup of grime, sweat, and smell would not be accepted. As such, the suit also cleans the wearer. She hummed at the information. Interesting. Suddenly, he smirked as he looked in her direction. What? Have you gotten Stockholm syndromed into liking me? I do not know what Stockholm is, but no. I am a warrior, and for elites we take the mate who matches or defeats us in both warrior skill and psychic duels. You have done both, and I am your servant for the next 1,000 years. Wouldn't it be reasonable to make the best of my current situation? He hummed. Good to know. She nodded as she brought up another point. When we Martians take a mate, we often form a psychic bond to show that we are mated. I'm not sure if you even see me like that, Dash. Before she finished, he said something. Remos, when I gave you this form, it was because it was a form I liked. I, of course, find it very attractive, very much, and your personality is full of warrior pride and violence, which suits me well. Though, would like to warn you that I am infertile. Remos hummed. Do you know how we Martians reproduce? No. When we take a mate, we of course have intercourse, and we use our psychic might to grant the child aspects, or each parent. However, since you're not a Martian, that may not be possible. Regardless, you already own by soul, meaning you own me, so own my body and mind as well. Now, Justinian froze as he looked at her. She was beautiful as he designed her body himself. You are quite forward, Remonish. She just grinned. I know. Fine. How do we do this? Since he was already not wearing his helmet, she walked toward him until she was in front of him. Meet my forehead. He did as she said and lowered himself until their foreheads met. Now, we link our psychic abilities. We will be able to share our strengths and thoughts and know where we are at all times. Memories, though, are something that is up to your choice. He closed his eyes as he and Remnosh linked their psychic abilities as he answered. Instantly, they could feel each other's location, thoughts, and emotions. It was weird because she had no negative opinion of him. She genuinely just thought that since he beat her, he deserved her. She smiled when she realized he believed her now. See? I was not lying. No, you were not. Behind you. I know. She spun around and lunged out and grabbed an invisible white Martian. This was a scout, meaning it was smaller than her true form by half. She lifted it off the ground with ease as she gripped its neck. The Martian's invisibility was undone as the alien spoke in the Martian language. No, I come as a messenger. Remnosh turned around to look at Justinian, waiting for his opinion. Put him down. Speak your message. When she put the Martian down, it kneeled and spoke with its hands held up in surrender. Warrior of the Red Sands, we wish for peace. Our race does not wish to continue to battle with you. Our Lord wishes to see you as guests in our city. Remnosh snorted. What? Justinian enters the city, and then he is attacked in numbers. The Martian shook his head. No, we truly want no more bloodshed. Justinian hummed. I will not go to your city. Bring your diplomat to me, and we shall speak. The white Martian nodded. That is fine. I will be back to deliver the message. With that, the white Martian burrowed under the ground to return to his city. When he was gone, Justinian grinned. Lies. Remnosh nodded. It is going to be an ambush. He spun his guardian spear a bit. Then let them come. I will kill any who attack me. Let's prepare for this attack. It will be brutal. Agreed. This will be a good chance to test out our psychic bond. Remnosh was fine with that because white Martian culture was brutal. She just wanted her race to not go extinct, and killing a few would not cause that. Now, they just had to prepare for that battle. Chapter 9. Magic Psychic Flame Rubric. Once the Martian messenger returned to the ground, Justinian prepared himself for the upcoming attack. He didn't trust the white Martians a lick because they were a brutal, savage race. He didn't even trust Remnosh, and she knew that. She smirked when she heard that thought of his. Probably for the best. He pointed at her face with a smirk of his own. I don't trust anyone, Remnosh, not even Diana. She is a member of the Justice League, and I am not the peaceful kind. She just raised her hands in surrender. And that just means you're not stupid. I will tell you this, but that attack of 3,000 was just the personal guard unit of my older brother. He is the next heir of our noble house, and I suspect the reason he grabbed and tossed me in the direction of your missiles is because I was challenging him in succession. As for the other 3, they are also my siblings, but they aren't challenging him. Justinian hummed at the information because after knowing her for 6 weeks, she had proved to be very strong. She could keep up with him somewhat. Her psychic might was extraordinary, and her skill with her psychic blade was incredible. That explains it then. How many will they be sensing this time, if it is an attack led by a true ruler? First, you got to know that there are millions of us underground. Our culture is brutal and savage, but even then not all are warriors. There is even a peaceful majority that wants to push for peace. It's the warrior caste which I came from that is more focused on brutality and conquering. So, I believe they will send a minimum of 25,000. They will bring more elites, more psychic focus weapons, and proper technology. Can you handle those numbers? She smirked as if testing him for weakness. He didn't give her a smirk back, as he had been wanting to test this out for himself, and he started to consult his advisors. This seems like a good time to use the fusion of the reduced venom and the blazing inferno of scorching flames. If I guide it with my mana and psychic energy, I could in theory finish their advanced force. My flames, once unleashed, will never stop burning. If you cast them in large amounts, there will be an area of this planet that will never cease to burn. That is why I don't get Drake. How do your flames keep burning? It is a curse I placed on them, a curse of endless fire. They were the flames I was born with, and I wanted them to be as powerful as they came. When I met Albion and my flames did not harm him, I created my other abilities to defeat him. The same goes for my original Reduce Venom. It destroys all organic matter, including the soul. However, your idea to cast a massive spell made of Draig's flames might work in the long run. The non-stop burning will cause heat to rise. Once he got his answer, he sat himself down and closed his eyes. Remos sat next to him and leaned onto his left shoulder, not bothering him more than that. At the moment, his mind was faster than Space Marines. Using his psychic energy, he split his thoughts into multiple threads, and he started to work on a spell. He was not going to hold anything back, and he built up this magic spell to utilize Draig's deadly flames. What normally would take mage hours, days, or weeks took him all of 10 minutes. Using the information on magic circles that Draig and Albion gave him, he created a flame storm spell that required both magic and psychic abilities to cast. When he opened his eyes, there was a fire burning in them because this was going to be great. Just in case, before the Martians came to negotiate, he started to craft me magic spells that would be useful. His 2 dragon advisors fed him all the knowledge, as both have millennia of experience. Using that, he started to experiment with tapping into other elements of magic. The one he wanted in particular was lightning, because it was one of the most destructive elements around. Thanks to all his training, the Emperor's blood was awake, and it was granting him strength. If he got lucky, he might become a perpetual and be nearly impossible to kill. On another note, the Emperor's psychic might was his to inherit with no warp to contend with. 12 hours later, after he carefully crafted several spells, most using psychic and magical energy, he felt Martians moving toward him. Just as Remos, they had moved in numbers greater than anything he had seen before. He turned next to him to look at Remos, who was giving him a big smirk. "Think you can handle it, big guy? Watch me." He stood up and hefted his guardian spear off his shoulder. He waited patiently for the Martian diplomat to emerge from the ground. When the Martian emerged, he was on the smaller side of his race, only about 8 feet tall. To designate him, he wore different gemstones around his neck and more regal clothing. White Martians in their true forms wore no clothing because there was no gender dimorphism between the genders. A male and female white Martian looked identical until they shape-shifted. Justinian waited as the Martian approached. He looked smaller and skinnier than even the scouts, as this caste was used for intelligence gathering and diplomacy between city-states or kingdoms. When the Martian was about 7 feet away, Justinian spoke. "That is close enough. We can talk from here." As he stood up, Remos stood with him with crossed arms. She sent a look at Justinian, who motioned with his head for her to retreat. "Things are going to get hot here. Fire hot." Hearing the word fire, her ingrained fear of fire took effect. Every time he used a campfire, he forced her to sit in front of the flames to make her get over her fear. It was a false reaction, but in all honesty, he didn't want her to turn into a burning Martian. She would just become a mindless emotional vampire, so this was just to teach her that flames could not hurt her. Normal flames, because the flames he was about to use were mythical. Regardless, she retreated away as Justinian and the diplomat spoke for now. "Warrior, I am Skrekadruk of the Katias city-state. As our previous messenger spoke, we would like to offer a peace treaty. Every time our warriors meet you, they die, and this loss of life is needless." The Martian spoke with rather a high degree of skill and finesse. Another man might have even believed him, but not Justinian. As a mage and psychic, he could sense the approach of the army. They wanted to fully wipe him out this time, so Justinian did what any proper Custodes did. "No,